It's very hard, especially when you're in a creative position, to not tie your self-worth to your results. Every time I finish a project, I fall into a black hole for a day. Sometimes this turns into a week where you just finish a project, either for a client or a video that you've been working on for your own YouTube channel, or I'm working on a documentary, or whatever it may be. And then maybe the client ends up changing his mind or giving you a hard time, or maybe there's budget problems, or maybe even you're really proud of what you have, but then in the end, it doesn't get the results that you wanted it to, and you end up starting to feel really down on yourself. If this was the best version of me, I would recover from this really quickly. Maybe I take like a quick nap or half a day at most, and then I just go straight back into making stuff, just jumping right back into the process of making something awesome that hopefully is gonna make people's jaw drop. I think I've always had a chip on my shoulder because I was bullied as a kid and this caused some self-esteem issues. And then also at a really young age, I lost my dad to cancer. I think a part of me is always just trying to make him proud with the work that I'm doing, and also the rest of my family, and just infuse it with the faith that they had in me. But in reality, it's not always that easy. Now lately I've had a bit of momentum, but I've been grueled by this fact that I'd really just let a lot of time go. I get stuck. I get frustrated in between projects. Even one of my heroes, Martin Scorsese, said that once you see the first draft of a project, you just get like visibly depressed. And I don't want to feel that way anymore, because I know that if I can just get into detachment and be completely locked in, no matter what the results are, where I'm that badass filmmaker that just goes right into the project, it would just change the trajectory of my life. Today's wins or losses wouldn't really matter, because on a long enough timeline, I would be that guy that would take a punch to the face and just get right back up and back into it. And that person is extremely dangerous. So this is an idea that I want to share with you because it's something that I'm trying to embody myself. And it's an idea from James Clear's Atomic Habits about how focusing on the system over the goal, over the results, ultimately is what keeps you detached, keeps you letting go, and keeps you in that space where you're dangerous, because no matter what the results are, you keep going. And on a long enough timeline, you end up winning. So in order to create that system, there are 4 ideas or building blocks that I want to go over that help me tremendously. This is the first building block. In the past, I've had moments or periods that have been absolutely crappy. I made a mistake at work and got scolded at, or I needed to get up at 5 in the morning to earn €7 an hour at a shitty job with shitty working conditions, or I was going through a breakup from a girl I used to love. Those moments or periods, I caught myself thinking, man, I can't believe this is happening to me. I honestly feel sorry for myself. And this is where the concept of Locus of Control comes in. To understand the Locus of Control, imagine you're playing a game of Monopoly with your friends. You land on a property and your opponent demands that you pay the full rent, even though you can't afford it. Do you think to yourself, I should have managed my money better earlier in the game? Or, this game is so unfair, why does everyone else always get lucky and I'm stuck with bad luck? If you answered A, you probably have an internal Locus of Control. You believe your choices and actions can influence the outcome of the game, and you take responsibility for your financial situation. If you answered B, you likely have an external Locus of Control. You believe that luck and outside forces are to blame for your situation, and there's nothing you can do to change it. Of course, it's just a game of Monopoly, and luck certainly plays a role in this. But the concept of Locus of Control can apply to many areas of life, from personal finances to career success. By recognizing our ability to influence the outcomes of our choices, we can take proactive steps to improve our situation and achieve our goals. Grasping this made me able to move away from having pity parties for myself and acknowledge that life just goes to shit sometimes without being debilitated by it, and just move on with a sense of my own agency and responsibility in any given situation. This is a second building block, and one of the most powerful concepts to understand that will increase your success. So I would always fall into a black hole after a project. For some reason, it was always really hard to get myself back into the rhythm of things. And the longer I let it drag on, the more energy it required to start that productivity engine back on. By now, it's become crystal clear to me why that is, and what you need to understand to avoid falling into the same trap. Let's start by defining something called the progress principle. The progress principle is a concept that describes the positive impact of making progress on people's motivation, engagement, and well-being. The principle is based on research by a Harvard Business School professor and a renowned psychologist who found that making progress on meaningful tasks is a powerful driver of intrinsic motivation and positive emotions like overall satisfaction. So the keys to make progress, any kind of progress, however small, on a task that is meaningful to you. A therapeutic approach called behavioral activation speaks to this too. Taking action towards goals and engaging in meaningful activities can help alleviate depression and increase motivation. Even physics are on your side here. An object in motion stays in motion, as Newton's first law of motion states. Because of a thing called inertia, an object tends to resist changes in its state of motion. So initially it's hard to start progressing because you start from a point of standstill. But once you get the ball rolling ever so slightly, it's easier to keep going because you're already moving. So do a single simple thing. Even just writing down a title or prepping your desk or whatever small 20-second effort it may be that moves you in the right direction. Because after a while, this train of motivation will carry you easier and easier into doing more and bigger meaningful tasks that push you towards achieving your goals. A little psychological hack that can help you get started was brought to us by Russian psychologist Bluma Zygarnik in the 1920s. She pioneered the Zygarnik effect in her 1927 article on unfinished and finished tasks. The Zygarnik effect is a psychological phenomenon that describes a tendency of people to remember interrupted or uncompleted tasks better than completed tasks. So when you write down a task and it is left incomplete or interrupted, it creates a sort of mental tension or cognitive dissonance that motivates the person to complete the task. This tension arises because the brain perceives the unfinished task as an unresolved goal, which creates a sense of psychological discomfort that persists until the goal is achieved. In terms of psychological traits, the more conscientious you are, the higher this effect will be. This idea is the third building block. As a kid, I was told I wasn't creative at all. I remember my 5th grade teacher telling me that I'd probably be better off becoming a professor because I was pretty good at explaining things and doing early forms of research, like boring my classmates to death with a presentation about the solar system. But what my teachers didn't know is that I was writing stories at home in a little notebook that I had. I didn't realize it until early adulthood, but I was creative. And the more I practiced it, the more creative I would become and the easier it came to me. And research has proven exactly that. It suggests that creativity can be trained and improved over time through deliberate practice and engagement in creative activities. This idea is supported by studies by Zhu and colleagues and Bowden and colleagues, showing that practicing creative activities on a regular basis can lead to improvements in creativity over time, and that deliberate practice, which involves setting specific goals, receiving feedback, and engaging in focused practice over a sustained period of time, can significantly improve creative abilities. Additionally, these findings are consistent with the concept of neuroplasticity, which refers to the brain's ability to change and adapt in response to new experiences or environmental stimuli. Studies have shown that engaging in creative activities and deliberate practice can lead to changes in the brain's structure and function, indicating that the brain is able to reorganize and adapt to support improved creative ability. For example, research by Beatty and colleagues has found that individuals who engage in creative activities have increased connectivity between different brain networks that are involved in creativity and cognitive control, and Calzado and colleagues found that mindfulness training can increase the brain's plasticity and enhance creativity. A good example of this would be writing a book. If you set yourself the goal of writing a book and setting aside time for deliberate practice every day for a sustained period of time, and you keep tugging away at that, you will end up completing the goal as well as significantly improve your creative writing abilities, altering your brain's structure to becoming a more creative individual. This is the fourth and final building block I want to cover. We've all had people that have impacted our lives in a profound way. Much like the classic hero's journey where the main character meets a wise old man or woman that guides them on their path, we all have that same experience of mentorship through a combination of inspiring people we know or meet. For me, I think of a math teacher I had in 9th grade showing empathy for students and a passion for his craft, yet demanding excellence from us all the same. I think of a professor I had at university who infused in me her conviction about nuance and mutual understanding and free speech. I think of my dad with his iron willpower and determination and unwavering faith in his family, and my mom with her incredible strength in continuing on, carrying the mantle of taking care of 2 sons after her husband had passed away. These are role models, and they're part of the foundation of inspiration that we should look up to ignite that engine and push us into action when we feel ourselves getting stuck. Research also confirms this. Having inspiring role models during childhood can have a significant impact on one's mindset and goal achievement. Social learning theory, developed by psychologist Albert Bandura, proposes that people learn from observing others, particularly role models, who exhibit with positive behaviors. This theory is especially relevant for children and adolescents who are still developing their own beliefs and values. Additionally, a study by Lent and colleagues found that self-efficacy, or the belief in one's ability to succeed at a particular task in a particular domain, can be increased by observing successful role models. This can make you more likely to attempt a task and persist in the face of challenges. Another study by Rhodes and colleagues found that people with positive role models were more likely to have higher career aspirations and a stronger sense of purpose in their chosen profession. But even if you didn't have positive role models as a kid or adolescent, there are steps that you can take to close that gap as an adult. You can seek out new role models in real life through your job, hobby, or friends, or you can read biographies of successful individuals, join groups or communities, set achievable goals, and practice positive self-talk. So in summary, if you want to create a system that protects you from falling back into a black hole, acknowledge your own agency and responsibility. Go one step at a time and keep momentum going. Understand that your creativity is a muscle like any other, and that role models are key as a fuel source for inspiration, and that you can take steps to find new positive role models even as an adult. Now, if you do these things and really internalize these ideas, I can guarantee that you won't fall into one of those black holes nearly as much anymore, or those periods where you're really unmotivated or uninspired, and you'll be that much closer to achieving your goals.